could be your brother, could be your cousin, it could be your uncle, it doesn't just have to be your coworker, it could be your boss. But Alex, so I am just going to go through these kind of quickly because otherwise it will be a very long video. I have over 50 books to talk about and 15 different profiles of types of people. So it's like a puzzle and a book. A puzzle and a book for people who like puzzles. This could really be anyone who you know loves a puzzle and a mystery. Hi everyone, it's me, Jess. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited to give you some ideas for books to buy for your friends, your family members, your co-workers, your neighbor, whomever you feel like giving a gift to this season. I recommend giving them a book. Now, I have, I think, 15 different profiles of people that I've expanded on from the gift guide that I made last year around this time that featured different profiles of different types of people. Finding a book for another person, especially someone who you might not know that well and you might not know their interests, can be a real challenge. It can be like looking for a needle in a haystack. So I wanted to make this video to give you some ideas, and I would welcome any questions in the comment section below if you want me to suggest ideas for people of specific interests or people that you just don't know how to shop for and don't fit into any of these profiles, which I guess leads me to a disclaimer that I just want to make before I dive into these different personalities and just say that this is just for fun and to give some structure to the gift guide that I wanted to make. So these are kind of types or stereotypes, you could say, which I understand is not always helpful, but it can be helpful when it hits the mark. So just to say that we all know that people in real life are complex, multidimensional. I myself am interested in probably most of these books, if not all of them, as a potential gift. Hint, hint. So just take these stereotypes with a little bit of a grain of salt. It's all in good fun. And I really hope that you find some inspiration today to go out and find that perfect book for someone that you feel would really enjoy it. Your non-readers, your readers. I'm going to go through the whole list. Every single book is just as unique as the people who read them. And again, some of these books for these different types of people will cross over into other types of people. So just keep that in mind when you're watching this. So let's jump right in and see if any of these profiles sound like anyone you know, or maybe even a little bit like yourself or a version of yourself. So I'm going to start out talking about types of friends first, acquaintances as well, so people you might work with, and then I'm going to talk about more family member types or archetypes. So the first friend profile that comes to mind for me, and I have a lot of friends that I think fit into this category, I myself fit into this category in a certain way. It's your on-the-go busy friend who has a very demanding lifestyle. They might work in a very stressful job, being an administrator or a lawyer or a doctor or somebody who has a lot of demands on their time. And their basic feeling is that they would love to read, but they don't really have time to read. So my go-to suggestion for someone like this is to gift them a set of short stories or a shorter book. I don't have a shorter book on my list today, but I do have 5 recommendations of short story collections, which I think would be fantastic. So I've named all of these profiles, but just keep in mind that gender is just a social construct and can be very fluid. First profile is of Sarah. We'll call her Sarah. 3 of these I have here with me in physical form. I'm going to start with a set of short stories that was longlisted for the Carol Shields Prize this year, and that is Cocktail by Lisa Alward. I didn't get to all of these short stories, but I really enjoyed them. The stories in Cocktail are set in the swinging 60s and each decade since, and they're very intimate, immersive stories that explore what is described on the back as life's watershed moments. I can't recommend this one enough. Another short story collection that I would recommend that has been recommended widely by many people over the last few years and that I picked up recently is The Secret Lives of Church Ladies by Deesha Philyaw. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. I didn't look it up. This explores the raw and tender places where Black women and girls dare to follow their desires and pursue a momentary reprieve from being good. The 9 stories in this collection feature 4 generations of characters grappling with who they want to be in the world, caught as they are between the church's double standards and their own needs and passions. And I've heard it's absolutely phenomenal. Another short story collection by an author whose other book I've read and loved is this one, Bliss, Montage by Ling. I read her dystopian novel Severance, which I really, really enjoyed. These stories are said to be about love and loneliness, connection and possession, friendship, motherhood, and the idea of home. And then the last set of short stories that I would gift would be Peacocks of Instagram by Deepa Rajagopalan. Again, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. It features interconnected stories spanning multiple decades, set in different parts of Canada and the United States and in India. The stories center on the experiences of Indian girls and women. They're linked by the protagonists of some of the stories playing minor roles in other stories. I really would love to get this as a Christmas gift. If there's anyone out there who wants to send it to me, you can email me. It sounds fantastic, and I think it would be great for somebody who's very busy and on the go. I have some other short story recommendations for other profiles, so stay tuned for those. Could swap them out depending on the types of interests the person has. So my next friend profile is Maya. Maya's just had a baby. And you know, when you've just had a baby, you're very tired and you don't have a lot of energy and you don't have a lot of time. This could also be good for someone who's a working mom or a single mom. The books that I'm going to recommend have main characters that are mothers or are single mothers and grapple with the experience of motherhood to some extent. The first is a fun series that I think would be great to gift to a new mother because I think they're very fast reads and they're fun. They're not too serious. I haven't read these yet, but I would love to at some point, and I've heard nothing but great things about this series. So the first in the series is Finlay, Donovan is Killing It. The series is by Elle Cosimano. I hope I'm saying that right. Again, I could be pronouncing the author's names incorrectly. Apologies in advance. I don't want to keep repeating that every time I say an author's name. So the Finlay Donovan series has as its protagonist a stressed out single mom of 2 who is also a struggling novelist. Finlay's life is in chaos, and in Finlay Donovan is Killing It, she has a new book that she's promised to her literary agent that isn't yet written. Her ex-husband fired their nanny without telling her, and this morning she has to send her 4-year-old to school with hair duct taped to her head after an incident with scissors. This is fast-paced. It's supposed to be very witty. It's supposed to be very wholehearted, and it depicts the frustrations and triumphs of motherhood in all its messiness. It's also about how she gets entangled in a real-life murder investigation, so it has that murder mystery aspect to it as well. The next book, which is a little bit more literary that I would recommend, is a book that I read some time ago but thought was really fantastic. It's Nightbitch by Yoder. This is about a woman who is a new mom, and it's about how it's a little bit of a stranger book, so it might be less conventional for your less conventional new mother friend. She has this experience where over the course of a short period of time, she starts to feel as though she is turning into a wolf. That's the simplest way for me to describe it. Our protagonist has had to quit her career to stay at home with her young child, and so it really explores that decision through this concept of her evolution into this wolf-like animal. Another book that is a little bit more literary that I would recommend that also deals with the complexities of motherhood is All Fours, which I'm reading right now by Miranda. It's a little bit more literary, and our main character is an artist, and she actually leaves her home to pursue an art project, but also to sort of get back to who she is as an artist. Is not for everyone, though, I would say. So I would really only recommend that you give this to someone that you know quite well who likes kind of more alternative type of writing. There's a lot of writing about sex in this book, so that's just something to keep in mind depending on how well you know the person and how they might respond to that. But I think it's a really interesting look at a woman who is in her 40s, who has a young kid and has had to make sacrifices as an artist to be at home with her husband and her child. And it really explores that quite well. Miranda July is not for everyone though, so just keep that in mind. And then finally, another set of short stories. So this could also work for our previous profile. This is Why We Can't Have Nice Things by Naomi Wood. This is a set of short stories about motherhood, and I think some of them are quite insightful. Some of the reviews that I've read have said things like, I wish I'd read this before I became a mother. From what I hear, it takes a very intimate look into the deep depths of motherhood. Stories are about pregnancy, about children, about how the emotional and physical brunt of the tasks of being a parent fall to the mother. I also think that quite a bit of it takes place during the pandemic. So if you're not interested or you think the person might not be open to reading about pandemic stuff, or if that's triggering for people, you might want to stay away from this one. But I think it'd be really good for a young mother because these books will make them feel seen. So I think that's really helpful. So the next friend, so this is Wayne. Wayne is like a hipster audiophile, knows everything there is to know about music, and get really nerdy about playing bass or being nerdy about a sound system, or being nerdy about something else even. This could cross over into playing different games. It could cross over into skateboarding or different sports. Okay, and this could be a woman as well, so it doesn't just have to be a man. My first recommendation is Brothers by Alex Van Halen. This is a very intimate portrait of his brother, Eddie Van Halen, and I think that this would be an ideal gift for somebody who is a music lover in your life. It's said to be a very intimate and open account and different from other rock and roll memoirs. He shares his very personal story about family, friendship, music, and his brotherly love for Eddie. And it's really a tribute to Eddie Van Halen. But I've been hearing really good things about it. So he's told it with the help of the acclaimed New Yorker writer Ariel Levy. So you can count on it being well written as well. And of course, Alex would have written this when he was still mourning Eddie's very untimely death. So I'm sure it would be very moving, as well as very insightful into what life was like as his brother. And it will speak to Eddie Van Halen's life as well. So another recommendation for a memoir that is newly released is Rebel Girl, My Life as a Feminist Punk by Kathleen Hanna. Kathleen Hanna is really the original Rebel Girl, and she was the front woman for the legendary bands Bikini Kill and Le Tigre. I actually saw Le Tigre here in Montreal back in the day, which was an awesome experience. I think that this would be an excellent gift as well to anyone who loves music. I'm anxious to read this memoir. It's focused a lot on her experiences in the music industry and also the significant relationships that really propelled her, including with her bandmates and friendships with other musicians like Kurt Cobain and Kim Gordon and Joan Jett. And she also opens up about falling in love with Ad Rock of the Beastie Boys and her own debilitating battle with Lyme disease. So I think this would be a fantastic memoir to read for really anyone. But if you're a music lover in particular, I think it would be fantastic. And it would be a really great gift to receive. The other two books that I pulled for the person of this profile, we're calling him Wayne, is The Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan, which I'm actually reading in December, rereading in fact, because I read it a long time ago when it first came out. It's an excellent book. It circles around the lives of Benny Salazar, an aging former punk rocker and record executive, and Sasha, the troubled young woman he employs. I think that this would be a great one to gift. And then I also would recommend Ordinary Human Failings by Megan Nolan. This was longlisted for, I don't know if it ended up being shortlisted, I cannot recall, but it was longlisted for the Women's Prize this year. This is an Irish writer, and she is writing about a family who emigrates from Ireland to England. And then a young child is killed on the London estate where they've moved to, and there's a lot of mystery surrounding how this little girl died. A journalist comes on the scene and begins to interview members of the family. The family children, or one of the children, is under suspicion. It also is set in the 90s, so it reflects that period of history very well. I think that it would be a great gift for someone who is a hipster. I really do. Now we're going to look at recommendations for that one friend who is just what you would call like a culture vulture or internet obsessed, really is fascinated by changes that are happening in society and how social media is affecting us. Somebody who's really got that vein of interest. I have quite a few recommendations for this person, but we're going to call him Simon. First recommendation that I would make is a book that I just finished. It's called Cue the Sun by Emily Nussbaum. This book is about the creation of the reality TV genre and really takes us through from the very beginning all the way up until present day. And it's fascinating, it's very insightful, it's a very quick read, it's very well written, and I would definitely recommend it to your culturally obsessed friend, not obsessed, but culturally, to your friend who has an interest in culture. Similarly, I think Monsters by Claire Dederer is a very good pick. It's all about the dilemma of the fan when they admire the work of somebody who is considered to be a monster from an ethical perspective, somebody who has been heinous, has been hedonist, has been greedy, but is also a genius, and somebody who has hurt other people through their pursuit of their art, but also because they think that they are more important or superior or better than other people because they make great art. So she really grapples with that dilemma, the fan's dilemma in this book, and she talks about a lot of different people who have fallen from grace over the last decade or so. Everyone from Michael Jackson to Woody Allen to Picasso to Hemingway. She really covers a lot of ground in this book. It's a very fascinating read, and again, for your culture vulture, your culture lover, I think that this would be a good one. Another one I'd recommend is I'm a Fan by Sheena Patel. It was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction. The unnamed narrator of I'm a Fan is in a seemingly unequal relationship with the man I want to be with. She is also addicted to cyber-stalking the man's other lover, an online influencer she refers to as the woman I am obsessed with. I've heard fantastic things about this one, and it deals a lot, I think, with online behavior, obviously, and also how people appear online, but I have heard that it's a bit explicit. So again, kind of trigger warning, or I don't know, I don't like to censor things, but some kind of like, please be aware that there is probably explicit sexual content in this book as well. I think the same holds true for my last recommendation for this character, which is the recently published Rejection by Toni Tuatumuti. This I've heard is excellent, but kind of over the top. It's supposed to be very, very funny and very, very observant, but it's also very provocative. It takes us into the touchiest problems of modern life. They're actually short stories, 7 interconnected short stories that transition between personal crises of a pretty complex ensemble of characters, comic tragedies of sex, relationships, identity, and the internet. And the overall theme is, of course, rejection and the sorrows and damage that comes from rejection. I've heard it's unforgettable. I've heard it's audacious. I think it is dealing with a topic that is very timely and is very relevant to where we are culturally. So I think it would be a great gift. So the next character I want to introduce you to is Alex. Alex is your coworker friend who always rides their bike to work, who's very engaged in kind of activism and is a very curious type. 6 is very interested in the environment and other social causes. For him, I would definitely recommend a book that I read this year for the BookTube Prize, which I thought was fantastic. It's a little bit long, but I think it's great nonetheless. It's called Wellness by Nathan Hill. It's about a couple who are trying to evolve their marriage after 10 years of being married. The main character is Jack, the husband in the marriage, which I think our friend Alex might be able to relate to. And it's told from Jack's perspective. He met his wife Elizabeth when they were college students in the 90s. He's a photographer, so it does deal with art, it deals with family, and it deals with the whole concept of being well, and it even looks at bioengineering, and it looks at kind of our strange obsessions in modern life with authenticity and self-improvement, and it just covers a lot of ground. So I think it would be an excellent gift really for anyone, but in particular this type. Another possibility for Alex could be Haruki Murakami's new book, The City and Its Uncertain Walls. I'm just recommending this because I think that it will be of interest to people who have either already read Murakami or are interested in Murakami. It's apparently about two teenagers in love, but one day the girl in the relationship disappears and her absence really haunts the main character for the rest of his life. The man in the story is said to go on a search to find this lost love. As with everything in Murakami, there is a bit of otherworldliness to this novel as well. I think it's going in between real worlds and fantasy worlds, and I think it would be a great gift. I would also recommend Evenings and Weekends. I took Evenings and Weekends out of the library. I started reading it and I was not able to finish it. Unfortunately, I had to return it to the library, but I'm hoping to get it back. And it's set in 2019, so it's set before the pandemic. It opens with a whale that is stuck in the Thames River, and there is an emphasis on climate in the story. It's described as being a critical look at the political, emotional, and financial hurdles faced by young adults trying to build their lives and often living for their evenings and weekends. So my next profile is for your coworker or your friend who always rolls their eyes whenever you talk about reading and books. They think that you're a snob. They think that reading is literary and that you're too highbrow for them. I have a few recommendations for this friend who might enjoy reading these books that are super interesting, but they're not as literary, they're not as serious. Someone who's looking for something not so serious. So we're going to call this friend Amy. So my first recommendation for Amy would be a book that I read this summer. It was The Guest by Emma Cline. This is a story about a young woman who is floating around Long Island just around Labor Day, and she is a bit aimless. She's a bit of a scammer, and it's really, really good, but not too serious. It's a little bit serious. As with Emma Cline's other book, The Girls, it deals with sort of similar themes, the difficulties faced by a young woman in modern society, but it's also very readable, and the story is very engaging, and it's very easy to get into the character and to sort of see her flirt with danger the way that she does. I would also recommend Anita de Montelas by Xochitl Gonzalez. Her other book, Olga Dies Dreaming, would be another good option. This one in particular is about a woman who it's based on the real life, actually, of an artist. She's actually profiled in Monsters, the same artist. It's about a real life artist who in the 80s tragically died. And then it takes us forward into the later 1990s to an art student who discovers her and the mystery around her. So the story moves back and forth in time. I would recommend this for our friend Amy because even though it deals with some serious themes, it's a very accessible book. Another one that I just finished that I would recommend for Amy is is The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. This is the story of a girl who disappears from her sleepaway camp, but it's linked also to the disappearance of another character that happened over a decade before. A young boy named Bear, who is a member of the family who lives on the property. Set in a sleepaway camp and set in New York State in the Adirondacks. So I think it's very accessible as well, and it's a bit of a mystery. It does have a lot of characters to follow, but in the end, I think this would be a good option. And the last book that I would recommend for Amy is probably anything by Dolly Alderton. But her new book, Good Material, has had a really great response. It's about the boyfriend, Andy, who I've heard is a very unlikable character. We're supposed to not like Andy. That's the point of this story. And Dolly, so Andy is Dolly's ex, and it's about how Andy goes about trying to resolve what he sees to be like the unsolvable mystery of his broken relationship with Dolly. It's supposed to be very funny, and it's supposed to be very relatable. I've heard that Andy isn't a very likable character, but I've also heard that that's the whole point. So hopefully Amy will like one of those. So the last friend character that I had in mind, we'll call her Greta, is the friend who loves adventure and mysteries and loves to solve puzzles and loves things that are a little bit offbeat. My first recommendation for Greta is a book called Una Out of Order by Margarita Montemor. This is a fun one. It's set on New Year's Eve, and it's about Una Lockhart, so it starts out in 1982 when she's supposed to be turning 19, but then she awakens 32 years into the future in a 51-year-old body. So I think that this would be really fun for Greta. A book that's sort of similar to this that's recently come out is The Husbands by Holly Gramazio. This is a debut novel. It's about a woman named Lauren who, when she returns to her home, she's greeted by her husband, Michael, but the problem is that she's not married. So she's never seen this man before in her life. According to everyone around her, they've been together for years. And then Lauren has to try to figure out how she can be married to someone she doesn't remember meeting. Those both sound really good. And then in terms of a mystery, I would recommend the follow-up to the original Cain's Jawbone. Cain's Jawbone became a TikTok sensation. It's a story that was published in 1934 by Edward Powes Mathers, and it involves a mystery that the reader has to solve. There's been only a handful of people who've been able to solve the mystery of Cain's Jawbone, and one of those people is the author of this book, which I'm recommending, John Finmore. So he was then asked to write a book similar to or inspired by Cain's Jawbone, and it's just come out. It's called The Researcher's First Murder. The reader is a character in the book, I think maybe even the murderer in the book, which sounds a little bit strange. But it's a little bit like the board game Clue. It's a body found stabbed to death in a locked room with no weapon and no motive. And then from there, you're fed clues to solve this mystery. It sounds really intriguing, and there's been so much hype about it online that I myself am very intrigued to maybe take myself down this little rabbit hole. But you do have to solve the murder yourself, just like in the original. So it's like a puzzle and a book. A puzzle and a book for people who like puzzles. This could really be anyone who you know who loves a puzzle and a mystery. So now we're going to move into more typical family members. So sometimes we're not quite sure what to buy for the teens or the 20-somethings in our life, the Gen Z and the Alpha generation. Definitely generations that we maybe have lost touch with. I'm going to start with Mike. Mike is a bit of a bro. He might be a sports guy. Perfect gift for Mike, I think, would be Al Pacino's new memoir. His new memoir is called Sunny Boy, And of course, from one of the most iconic actors in film, in every Godfather movie, he is giving an account of his creative life in full. So that could be a great gift for Mike. Another recommendation I would have for Mike is Bullet Train by Kotaro Isaka. I read Bullet Train a couple of years ago. It's a very fun action story that takes place on a train. It involves a mission, and I think it's a really fun, really quick read. It's translated from the Japanese. It was actually made into a film. I have never seen the film. And the same author has an Assassins series out. I have one of, I think this is the second in the series, called Three Assassins. This is about Suzuki, who is an ordinary man until his wife is murdered. To get answers and his revenge, Suzuki abandons his law-abiding lifestyle and takes a low-level job with a front company operated by the crime gang Maiden, who are responsible for his wife's death. This, as I said, is the second in a series, but I do think that these can be read as standalones. For the more sensitive younger member of your family, we can call him Zach. Let's say he's a little bit more of an emo kid. I would recommend anything by Ocean Vuong. On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. The letter of a son to his mother who cannot read. I haven't had a chance to read this one yet, but I've heard it's absolutely beautiful, very moving. I would also recommend one of my favorite books from last year, The Bee Sting by Paul Murray. This is really a family saga, and the characters are wonderful in this story. And in particular, I think that the father's character and the daughter character and even the younger son character might be characters that would be relatable to younger people in your family. It's set in Ireland, and it's set at the time of the economic crisis in 2008. So different stories of the different lives of the four members of this family and just how individual they are. And it really reveals how little we sometimes know about one another. It's a big chunky one, so you have to make sure that you're getting this for someone who you know enjoys reading. And the last book that I would recommend for Zach would be This Boy's Life by Tobias Wolff. This is the 30th anniversary edition of this memoir. It is the story of really what is a less than ideal childhood. So I've heard that what makes this book such a great memoir is that it really is about that struggle of going from being a teenager to becoming like a functional adult and trying to find and understand who you are outside of how the world sees you. So I think that this would be a really great gift to give to really anyone in this age group. A trigger warning though, he did grow up with an abusive stepfather, and he writes about that in the memoir. So just be aware of that. I've heard that it's not just sort of grim and depressing because of that being part of his experience. I've heard that it's told with a lot of wit and humor as well. And then another young person, there's sort of two other young person type of characters. So I'm not recommending any YA, but this would also be for someone younger in the family, possibly a younger girl, for example. I would recommend Bad Cree by Jessica Johns. This is such a good book. It's really interesting because it plays with the idea of the real world and the dream world. It's written by an Indigenous author, a Cree woman, and a young Cree woman at that, who is struggling with the experience of losing her sister. And it starts out where she wakes up one day and she's holding a branch from the woods where she just was in her dream. And it goes from there. It's a great read. I would really recommend it for the younger people in your life. It really deals with family, and it deals with sisterhood. It deals with being young and moving away from, in this case, our main character moves away from her community and lives in the city. So it deals with a lot of coming of age themes as well. There is a special edition in bookstores in Canada, at least, of Station 11, which is Emily St. John Mandel's novel that was turned into a television series. So this book was actually written before we experienced COVID. And it's actually about a flu pandemic. It's a bit of a dystopian story. I think it's great to gift to someone if you think that they haven't read it before. Many people I know love this book, and our protagonist is quite young, so I think that she's a very relatable hero. And it's all about how Kristen is moving around with this troupe of actors and musicians, trying to survive in this kind of dystopian post-pandemic world where civilization has come crumbling down. We're calling her Chloe. Did we say we were calling her Chloe? I'm calling her Chloe. That would be a great gift for Chloe. Other suggestions I have for Chloe, Rainbow Rowell has a new book out. It's a romance. I think that this would be a fantastic gift. I think that Rainbow Rowell is at her best when she's writing this type of contemporary story. It's set back in high school, and it's about Shiloh and Carrie, and about how everybody thought that Shiloh and Carrie would end up together. They were just friends. They were best friends. They spent a ton of time together. Shiloh did go to college, and Carrie went and joined the Navy. And then somehow everything changed. Then we pick up with those two characters later on. Shiloh's 33. And it's been 14 years since she's talked to Carrie. She's been married, she's been divorced, she has 2 kids, and she's back living in the same house where she grew up, but her life is nothing like what she planned. It's about how they reunite. It sounds fantastic, and I would definitely recommend this one for Chloe. Again, it can cross over to many other people who you might think could enjoy something like that. Another suggestion I would have for Chloe is YN by Esther Yee. This had won a ton of awards in 2023, and it sounds intriguing. It's as if her life only began once Moon appeared in it. The desultory copywriting work, the boyfriend, and the want of anything not Moon quickly fall away when she beholds the idol in concert, where Moon dances as if his movements are creating their own gravitational field. On live streams, as fans from around the world comment in dozens of languages, even on skincare products endorsed by the wildly popular Korean boy band, of which Moon is the youngest, most luminous member. Seized by ineffable desire, our unnamed narrator begins writing YN fanfic, in which you, the reader, play out an intimate relationship with the unattainable star. Surreal, hilarious, poignant. That, I think, would be also another fantastic option. And just in that vein of sort of superstardom, if you do happen to have someone in your life who is a Taylor Swift fan, and I know that some of us do, there are 2 Taylor Swift books that I would recommend if you know for sure that you have someone like this in your life. The first is the just released Heartbreak is the National Anthem. It's a celebration of Taylor Swift's musical journey, cultural impact, and reinvention of pop music for Swifties by a Swiftie. It's written by Rob Sheffield, and it really explores the cultural phenomenon and worldwide obsession with this woman who is really this agent of emotional chaos within her fandom. And there's really no parallel to someone like Taylor Swift in history, and I think it would be a really interesting book to read if you're interested in culture, but it would be a great gift to give to someone who you know is a huge fan of Taylor Swift. This is kind of a certified look, if you will. There are a lot of other books out there that are a little bit more like picture books or they're fan books, but I think this one is the one that I would recommend if you wanted to give something to someone that really holds a lot of substance on Swift and the Swiftdom. And the other recommendation that I would have that I think has a lot of merit and would have a lot of value is a book called Taylor Swift by the Book, The Literature Behind the Lyrics, From Fairy Tales to Tortured Poets. This is by Rachel Federer and Tiffany Tetrow. And in this book, they really explore all of the literary references in all of Taylor Swift's catalog. I think that that would be a really interesting gift to give someone who you know is also interested in books and reading, and they can start to make some connections between Taylor Swift and Shakespeare, or Taylor Swift and the Bronte sisters, or Taylor Swift and Daphne du Maurier. I think this would be a really fun one to gift as well. And the other person in your family who maybe is the complete opposite of a Taylor Swift fan, I'm going to call her Mel. Maybe she's into more dark things, weird things. First suggestion that I would have for Mel is Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Bazterrica. Portrays a society in which a virus has contaminated all animal meat, and because of the lack of animal flesh, cannibalism becomes legal. This is also a satire and a political commentary, but I think, and it's dystopian. So I think that this would be great for someone who is a bit younger, who is interested in kind of horror and science fiction, psychological fiction, dystopian fiction. It's a translated work as well. Another translated work that I would suggest would be Fever Dream by Samantha Schweblin. This is a story about a young woman named Amanda who lies dying in a hospital, and describes, it's a short book, and it describes her interactions with a boy named David who comes to sit beside her. He's not her child, she's not his mother, but they explore the story of haunted souls and family and desperation, and it's written in a way that makes you feel as if you're actually having a fever dream, which is very cool and very unusual. I'd also recommend anything by Stephen Graham Jones. Night of the Mannequins is a short one that I picked out for Shorty September. It sounds like a lot of fun. And one last laugh for the summer as it winds down, one last prank just to scare a friend. Bringing a mannequin into a theater is just some harmless fun, right? Until it wakes up, until it starts killing. I think this would be really fun for those younger people in your life who like horror. He's written a whole horror trilogy, starting with My Heart is a Chainsaw. I could recommend really any of his books. Only the Good Indians. Any of those books I think would be good choices. And last one for Mel is The Book Eaters by Sunya Dean. This sounds really, really good. This is set on the Yorkshire moors, and it's about a secret line of people for whom books are food. When they eat the books, they retain all of the content of the book. So to them, for example, spy novels are a peppery snack. Romance novels are sweet and delicious. Eating a map can help them remember destinations. And children, when they misbehave, are forced to eat dry, musty pages from dictionaries. This just sounds so fun and so off the wall and a little bit dark. And I think that this would be a great book as well to gift to Mel. Or to Chloe, or to anyone really. Moving on to some of the older members of the family, let's talk about Auntie M. Our Auntie M is traditionally a historical fiction reader. She loves Anne Patchett. She loves a good novel. You know, she likes a good family saga. My first recommendation for Aunt M is The Strange Eventful History by Clara Massoud. Strange Eventful History is a saga for sure. So this is a family saga. The story opens in June of 1940 when the Germans conquered Paris. And at that time, one of our main characters, Gaston, is serving at the consulate in Greece. His wife, Lucienne, and their 2 children have fled Greece and are in their family home in Algeria. And history intervenes throughout the story. And I think that it would be something that Auntie M might really enjoy. Another suggestion for Auntie M is The Postcard by Anne Barret. I've heard good things about this as well. This is set during World War II. It's an anonymous postcard that is delivered to the Barret family home. And on the front is a photo of the Opéra Garnier in Paris. On the back, the names of Anne Barret's maternal grandparents, Ephraim and Emma, and their children, Noémie and Jacques, who were all killed in Auschwitz. So years after this postcard is delivered, the heroine of this novel is moved to discover who sent it and why. Another book that I would recommend for Auntie M is Absolution by Alice McDermott. It's about American women, American wives, the role that they played during the Vietnam War. They discover how their own lives as women on the periphery of politics, of history, of war, of their husbands' convictions have been shaped and burdened by the same sort of unintended consequences that followed America's tragic interference in South East Asia. I've heard really good things about Absolution and I would like to read it myself. I think it'd be a great gift. It was one of the best books for quite a few critics last year, at the end of last year. And then my last recommendation for Auntie M is the new Elizabeth Strout book, Tell Me Everything. You know, the popularity of Elizabeth Strout's books would mean that it's possible that Auntie M has already read other books by Elizabeth Strout. The one that I have on hand is Olive Kitteridge, which was made into a television series starring Frances McDermott. She is just one of many characters that appear in Elizabeth Strout's stories. In this one, Tell Me Everything, which I believe you can read as a standalone, but might be better if you've read all of her other books, but honestly, I think you can give this as a standalone book. In this particular story, set in Maine, the town lawyer Bob Burgess has become enmeshed in an unfolding murder investigation, defending a lonely, isolated man accused of killing his mother. A mystery, and if Auntie M really likes this one, she could go back and read Olive Kitteridge or some of the other books by Elizabeth Strout, or maybe, again, she's already read all of Elizabeth Strout's books and she's anxious to get to this one. Auntie M is married to Uncle Chris. Uncle Chris is middle-aged, that middle-aged man in the family. He's still a reader, but don't know what to get him. And I have a couple of suggestions for him. So Stephen King has a set of short stories out this year called You Like It Darker. It reminds me a lot of the Leonard Cohen album, You Want It Darker. It's a similar title. But I've heard very good things about this. Stephen King, I think, is potentially at his best when he's writing short stories. Among the stories is a sequel to Cujo. So if Uncle Chris is a Stephen King fan, Uncle Chris is really gonna like getting this set of short stories. I've heard that it's very, very good. A book that I would suggest for Uncle Chris is one that I read during the BookTube Prize judging. It's Small Mercies by Dennis Lehane. It is a story of revenge like no other. It's set in 1974 during a heat wave in Boston, and its protagonist, Pat Fennessy, is really trying to get back at the mob boss who has, she believes, murdered her daughter. Also, because it's set in 1974 and Boston takes place at the time when a federal judge had ruled that two Boston high schools, one in a black neighborhood and one in a white neighborhood, would be the first to integrate. So that is set as the backdrop for this story. It really reads fast. It reads almost like a screenplay. There's a lot of action. The characters are fantastic. I would really recommend this one, or really anything maybe by Dennis Lehane for Uncle Chris. If you wanted to go with something just a little bit lighter, that's nonfiction for Uncle Chris, I would recommend Stanley Tucci's new book, What I Ate in 1 Year and Related Thoughts. I'm a huge fan of Stanley Tucci's, and I think that reading about food is so comforting and so fun and interesting, and you can get really engrossed in this kind of a book. I myself have loved food writing. So in this book, Tucci actually does record 12 months of eating in restaurants, in kitchens, on film sets, at press junkets, at home and abroad, with friends, with family, with strangers, and occasionally just by himself. And I think that this, again, would be a really wonderful gift to get this holiday season. Then we come to Stan, senior member of the family, history buff. First book that I would recommend for Stan is Challenger. I think this would make a great gift actually for anyone who's interested in history. Challenger, a story of heroism and disaster on the edge of space. Actually, when I teach my management class, I often teach about the Challenger disaster because a really interesting study in management and power dynamics and human error and how can something like this happen and how could it be avoided in the future. This book, which is newly out by Adam Higginbotham, again, I hope I'm saying that correctly, is said to be the definitive, dramatic, minute-by-minute story of the Challenger disaster based on new archival research and in-depth reporting. He's taking a look at, again, how a handful of central protagonists, the 7 members of the doomed crew, takes a look at their lives up to the accident and then takes a look at the tragedy itself and into the investigation that followed it. Another great gift option in the nonfiction department. Another excellent suggestion For Stan would be The Knowing by Tanya Talaga. This is from the critically acclaimed and award-winning author of Seven Fallen Feathers. Excellent book for understanding the true history of Canada. If you're just trying to understand the impact of the realistic, darker parts of our history having to do with Indigenous peoples and residential schools. She details the history of her family, but she also provides background information through that very personal lens. And it really emphasizes for the reader how personal the matter is to survivors of the residential school system and residential schools and colonization. I think that this would be a great gift to give for anyone who's interested in understanding more about our colonial history here in Canada. And I do think that if we really want to understand our history, it's really important for us to be reading Indigenous voices on that topic. I can't recommend gifting something like this to someone that you care about who's interested in history enough. Oh my goodness, you guys, I'm so sorry. My battery ran out. That's never happened to me before. I've never talked so much that the battery has run out. This is a new thing. So I've just switched to my vlogging camera. So my apologies if the angle is a little bit different. Also, I'm not using the mic because I don't have anywhere to clip it. Carrying on with my last recommendation for Stan, which is the Heaven and Earth grocery store. We're almost at the end of the list. I do think that this would be a lovely gift. It's a very heartwarming story with a cast of a number of different characters. It's about a community in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. The story opens with the members of the community digging the foundations for a new housing development. They discover a human skeleton and then they go back and try to figure out who owns the skeleton. It really is the story about the residents in this community called Chicken Hill, a poorer neighborhood, and it's populated by immigrant Jews and African Americans, and it's about how they live together side by side. It has a wonderful cast of characters. It's a delightful book, and I think that it would make a really nice gift. The last person that I would make recommendations for is a person who I guess would be sort of like me. Now, I'm not asking you to get me any of these books, anyone, but someone that you know who reads a lot, who might be an English teacher, who might be a bit of a bibliophile, they're a big reader, and you're looking to give them something that maybe they haven't had a chance to get to yet, maybe that they haven't read yet. Her name is not Jessica. I named her Zoe. So Zoe she's probably a PhD, or she might be a grad student, or she might be someone who is just super literary. So my first suggestion for Zoe is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. This book has been around for a long time. It won the Booker in 2016 Nobel Prize for Literature. Han Kang is a South Korean author, and this is a novel that's supposed to be, I think, a bit strange. On the back it just says, a darkly beautiful modern classic about rebellion, eroticism, and the female body. One of the most extraordinary books you will ever read. It's short. I think that this would be a great gift. I don't know. It's possible that this friend of yours might have already read it. So just beware. Make sure you know that the person hasn't read it yet. That's always a problem when you're buying books for people. Always make sure you get a gift receipt. I also read my first book by Clarice Lispector this year. It's a translated work. Clarice Lispector is an author from Brazil. I really enjoyed The Hour of the Star. This is a really nice edition. I haven't even had a chance to talk about it in a wrap-up yet, but I do think that Clarice Lispector is a fascinating author. Clarice Lispector has been compared to Franz Kafka, and her books really do depict, like, they're very, very highly personal, but they really depict kind of an existentialist view of the dilemma of being human. That's really what she deals with. And I really loved The Hour of the Star. I haven't had a chance to do a wrap-up for this one, but it'll be coming soon. I would definitely recommend this for your literary people. Another option would be to gift this friend Zoe anything by Claudia Pinheiro. I've already talked about A Little Luck in my recent wrap-up. This could be a great option for a gift. She also wrote the very popular Elena Knows, and she's written some other fantastic books that are now translated into English. She's an Argentinian writer. She has been popular for being a crime writer, but her books actually have a lot of social commentary as well. This one, A Little Luck, in particular, deals with a woman who is in an accident and how that accident impacts her life and how she deals with the guilt that she feels after the accident happens. My final recommendation for Zoe would be the very recent translation of the Iliad by Homer, translated by Emily Wilson. The book itself, the Iliad, is described as one of the foremost achievements in Western literature. Homer's Iliad tells the story of the darkest episode of the Trojan War. At its center is Achilles, the greatest warrior champion of the Greeks, and his conflict with his leader, Agamemnon. Interwoven in the tragic sequence of events are powerfully moving descriptions of the ebb and flow of battle, the besieged city of Ilium, the feud between the gods, and the fate of mortals. And I have heard nothing but incredible things about this new translation by Emily Wilson. I don't think that's the kind of thing that you would necessarily buy for yourself. So for that reason, I think it would make an outstanding gift. So that brings us to the end of the book section of this gift guide. I know this is a long video. I hope that you can dip in and dip out of it. The last section is just to point out a few bookish accessories that you might consider giving to your bookish friends, coworkers, and family if you feel too intimidated to choose a book for any of those people. So my first idea for a cute bookish accessory would be a homemade bookmark. There are a lot of printables online. I'll leave a couple of them linked in the description box below. A homemade gift is always a really nice idea. Here is an example of some homemade bookmarks. These are from a page that I found that actually has a tutorial that walks you through making this type of a bookmark. So that could be a lovely gift to give to someone special. You can also make your own bookmarks using Canva or some other kind of illustration tool. This is a very cute Christmas themed illustration. That's one of the template illustrations in Canva that could be cute to give to someone. And then of course I had to include a Kafka bookmark because if you know that somebody really loves a particular author or is potentially maybe even obsessed with said author, you could give them a bookmark with an image of that author. Another accessory that I would recommend that I use a lot as a reader is a little reading light that you can clip onto your book. Here is a very cute one that's very small and very portable. Another option, if you don't want to give the reading light and you want to be cheeky, would be to give them a headlamp, because that is also very useful as a reading light at night. I sometimes use my headlamp to read, and I have to tell you, it's perfect. I often fall asleep with it on. It's a very comfortable thing to use for reading. So that's another option, a little off the wall. I would definitely recommend some kind of tabs, which you could also include with your homemade bookmark and your book. I like these tabs from Stalogy, but you can find cute little tabs at paper or stationery stores, which would be a nice thing to add. So I have a lot of mugs already, but you can give book-themed mugs to your bookish friend, and I especially love this banned book mug, which I think is fantastic, would make an excellent gift, especially for a coworker or for a friend you know, where it fits their personality. So those are some of the accessories that I would suggest. I hope that you got some ideas from watching this video, And I wish you all very happy holidays. Stay tuned. There's lots of content coming on the channel, including vlogs and Christmas decorating and Christmas reading for the reindeer readathon. Please comment in the comment section below if there is any profile that I missed. I'd love to hear your suggestions in the comment section below. Thank you so much everyone for watching. Happy shopping. Remember to buy at your independent bookseller, not at Amazon. And I will see you in my next video. Bye for now.
It's a cold night, baby, and I'm on my way to you. And the snow keeps falling down. Lit a fire and looked down on the avenue. I just love the way you carry the crown.